Let's be real, if your company's strategy is still carved in stone, you might already be a dinosaur. Today, we're talking about a completely different playbook, one that tosses out those rigid 5-year plans for a system that actually thrives on change. This is adaptive portfolio management, and it's all about figuring out how to win in a world that absolutely refuses to stand still.
So let me ask you something, and be honest. Is your strategy, the one you're using right now, actually built for the crazy, unpredictable market we're all living in? Or is it kind of a relic, something left over from a much simpler, more predictable time?
At this slide, this just lays it all out, doesn't it? On the left, you've got the old way of doing things, these fixed, long-term plans, reviews that happen maybe once a quarter, and this huge reliance on forecasts, which are basically just educated guesses. But on the right, that's the world we actually live in. Conditions are always changing. The market shifts constantly, and you need to be able to respond like now. The old way just can't keep pace.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we're going to tackle the core issue, what we call the rigidity problem. Then we'll dive into the data-driven pivot that every manager needs to make. After that, we'll see how it all connects to an agile execution engine, why aligning the architecture is so critical, and finally, we'll get to the best part, the huge innovation payoff.
Okay, first up, let's get right to the heart of why those old models are failing so spectacularly. It's what we call the rigidity problem, and it's what happens when your perfectly polished, static plan runs headfirst into messy, unpredictable reality.
You see, the fundamental weakness is this. Traditional strategies are like these massive, slow-moving ships. By the time the captain on the bridge notices the current has changed, a new competitor pops up, customer taste shift, some new tech disrupts everything, it's often way too late to steer the ship in a new direction.
So how do we fix this? Well, it brings us to the first huge solution, a complete pivot in the role of the manager. We have to move away from being a fortune teller trying to predict the future and become more like a data-driven navigator, someone who's constantly reading the instruments to guide the ship.
And this is where we bring in the hero of our story. It's called adaptive portfolio management, or APM. This isn't about throwing your plan out the window. It's about making your plan a living, breathing thing, one that's dynamic, iterative, and designed from the ground up to continuously adjust to what's really happening.
Now, here's the absolute key difference. The old way leaned on long-term forecasts. Again, just guesses about the future. The APM approach, though, it grounds every single decision in current performance metrics. It's not about what we think might happen next year. It's about what the data is telling us is happening right now. The engine that actually makes this work is something called dynamic rebalancing. So instead of waiting for that quarterly meeting, you're constantly adjusting where your resources go. Your money, your people, your focus. This could be happening monthly, weekly, or in some fast-moving areas, even daily, all driven by that real-time data stream.
And the result of all this? It's not just a fuzzy feeling. It delivers a very real, tangible benefit. You get much better risk-adjusted returns. Why? It's simple. You're forced to cut your losses on failing projects way earlier, and you get to double down on the emerging winners that much faster. It's a system that takes human emotion out of the equation and lets the data do the talking.
But look, a brilliant responsive strategy is totally useless if your teams on the ground can't actually act on it, right? That's where the Agile execution engine comes in. This is what connects that high-level strategic thinking directly to the action.
Just think of APM as the strategic brain, providing the why and the what. It plugs directly into Agile teams that are already built for speed and flexibility. So when a big strategic pivot comes down from the top, the Agile teams don't panic. They're already set up to handle those shifts in priorities without missing a beat.
And this right here is the engine that keeps it all humming, the classic plan, do, check, act cycle. It's a continuous loop. You plan based on real data. You go do the thing. You check the results against your metrics, and then, this is the most important part, you act on that feedback to adjust the plan. It's constant learning, built right into the process. Okay, so you've got this system of fast-moving, adaptable teams. That's great. But how do you keep it all from just flying apart into chaos? This is where the unsung hero of the story comes in, the enterprise architect, who provides the blueprint that holds it all together. In an APM world, the architect has two mission-critical jobs. First, visibility. They have to make sure everyone, from the CEO down to the individual developer, is looking at the same real-time picture of what's going on. And second,
alignment. They provide the guardrails, ensuring that every single project, every pivot, is still moving the company toward its main goal.
Now, this visibility isn't some kind of magic. It's actually very practical. It's achieved through centralized, real-time dashboards. This becomes the single source of truth for the entire organization, pulling in data from everywhere so that decision-makers have the clear, honest facts they need.
And I really want to hammer this point home. Agility without alignment is just a prettier word for chaos. You'll have teams all pivoting brilliantly, but in completely different directions. You're just burning money and energy, and you're not actually getting anywhere that matters.
But when you get that architectural alignment right, everything changes. Every single pivot, no matter how small, becomes a strategic move. A team can change course on a dime, and they can do it with the confidence that they are still perfectly in line with the company's North Star. That's how you get both speed and coherence.
And that brings us to the ultimate payoff, the thing we're all after, innovation. Because let's face it, in today's world, it's innovate or evaporate. APM is what transforms innovation from this terrifying high-stakes gamble into a smart, calculated strategy.
And this leads to a really cool way of thinking about your innovation portfolio. It's called a mutation rate strategy. I want you to think about your new ideas like biological evolution. You're constantly making a bunch of small bets, and you adjust where the resources go based on what the environment, in this case the market, is telling you is surviving and thriving.
The principle is actually really simple, but it is so powerful. When your overall performance is dipping, you increase your mutation rate. That means you fund more experiments, more crazy ideas, more exploration. But the second one of those experiments starts to show real promise, you pivot hard. You shift your resources to exploit that success and scale it up as fast as you can.
So at the end of the day, what does this all add up to on the bottom line? Well, the benefits are very real. You get massive gains in efficiency because you're killing bad ideas early. Your response time to new opportunities goes through the roof, and all of that leads to fundamentally better performance across the board.
So we'll just leave you with this final thought to chew on. The market, your competitors, your customers, they are all adapting and changing in real time every single day. In a world like that, the biggest risk isn't making a wrong move. The biggest risk is standing still. So the question is, can your portfolio really afford to do that?